the tragic deaths of initiates during traditional circumcision rituals has certainly cast a shadow over this cultural practice for years. In response, the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, that's Contralesa, has been over the years implementing new measures to try and ensure the safety of young men who undergo the initiation practice. These proactive steps, we're told, are aimed at preventing fatalities and safeguarding the health and well-being of initiates, marking a significant shift in how these rituals are conducted. Let's get you a sense of what these measures actually entail and whether they're working. Bring in now the Secretary General of Contralesa, that's Zolani Mkiva, who joins us via our video link this morning. Great to have you on the SABC News channel, sir. Thanks very much indeed for making time. Sadly, we're speaking at a time where there have been more deaths since the initiation season has begun, at least for this winter period. Let's begin by just unpacking what specific new measures Contralesa is implementing this time around.
Well, thank you very much for having us. We had taken a view, my brother, to hold workshops as well as training, especially in the affected areas, the hotspots, to ensure that we bring to speed all those practitioners that are working within the framework of the initiation season, to ensure that we don't leave no stone unturned. So the training has played a very significant role in this respect, because we don't want to take things for granted. And in some cases, some of the people who are involved in this, they are like organic practitioners. And therefore, it is important to take them through the regulations in order to ensure that we do troubleshooting, we prevent any form of fatalities from happening. So I think the issue of the training and the workshops has played a very key role in aligning all the practitioners, from traditional surgeons to caregivers to monitors, but as well as the community members. I must say, though, that there's still a huge gap insofar as the aggressive campaign that takes on board the entire communities. And that is due to a lack of resources. But working together with other stakeholders, particularly the government departments, Department of Health, Police, as well as COGTA, it has really helped a great deal, as well as the input by the houses of traditional leaders, as well as the initiation forum. All of those stakeholders, they are putting hands on the deck and we're working in unison in order to ensure that we prevent these deaths from happening. But of critical importance, what is really a challenge for us is the bogus initiation schools. It's very much difficult to detect them to a point wherein we think that the intelligence services must come on board, and we must include latest models of technology in terms of monitoring, including the deployment of drones, if it needs be.
Do you think there's a coordinated type of attempt to ensure that these bogus schools continue to exist? In other words, is this more of an organized crime than what perhaps we've acknowledged it to be in the past?
For us as Contralesa, we have always made a point that those who are engineering the bogus initiation schools are actually operating like human traffickers. In that context, this is organized crime. There's no question about it. I made a point yesterday that as we were preparing for the last 3 to 4 months for this initiation season, it dawns to us that these criminals also take time to plan as we plan. So in other words, it is definitely organized crime by people who understand the nuances of what gets done when we prepare. So they do the same, but their intention is full of maleficence to the extent that they want to use this tradition in order to make a lot of money.
Of course, you know, we have different conversations each year, but it's really the same issues that keep arising. For example, we know of a case of, you know, a mother of a 10-year-old boy in Lephalale in Limpopo who was kidnapped, taken to an initiation school. And it's very, of course, reminiscent to instances we've heard in the past where, in some cases, boys are taken without the consent of their parents as part of this cultural practice. I wonder what kind of new ways that could be tackled in a context where we know that a lot of these issues actually take place in communities where residents are vulnerable to something like this taking place.
we cannot do this only as the institution. The community has to be involved. And that's why I spoke about the community awareness and public education in this respect. We do need to do extensive engagement with the communities. But also, it is important that we bring in, the public institutions of schooling, especially students who go into grade 12. They are in a state of readiness to be enrolled in the initiation school. I think the process of preparing must include the children themselves, even at a school level. So the schools must come on board so that they give this awareness that children are risking their lives if they allow themselves to be trapped into bogus initiation schools. Children must listen to their parents. It is only a parent that must sign a consent form in order to enroll and initiate into a traditional initiation school. We want those steps to be followed to the T. Without that, we're going to continue to have this problem. But as I say, one of the most important things that we're putting across as Contralesa is that the initiation schooling itself needs to be institutionalized, it needs to be formalized, it needs to be professionalized, and that must be part and parcel of the annual performance plans of the government to ensure that there's also a budget that is set aside for that particular role. This is very important going forward because it is going to help us to move away from ad hoc planning to a planning which becomes part and parcel of the long-term strategies.
Right.
And in that way, we are confident as Contralesa that we can alleviate the problems that we have.
How much buy-in, though, do you think that will get? Because in the past, some communities have actually asked for less interference from the government. If a budget is going to be set aside, some people might say the practice will be taken over by the state. Is that something that Contralesa is kind of aware of? I mean, how do you negotiate that kind of tension?
No, we have given ourselves time to think about this. We have applied ourselves very well in that respect. We are saying very clear and with the clarity of the mind that the institution of traditional leadership is the custodian of the ritual, and therefore it must always lead from the front. When we say it must be institutionalized, that will give effect to a support function. The government comes in with the resources as a support function, not to stage a coup and take over the custodianship of the ritual. That will be a problem. And I don't think that government would have an interest in taking over. It is not government's role to actually assume this kind of responsibility. The government creates an enabling environment and also puts resources into the equation in order for us to perform optimally so that there's efficiency, so that there are no fatalities. And I think that we are in agreement. This is an African government, and it is a government that understands where we come from. It should have respect for the culture and the traditions. They know that this is a sacred ritual, and therefore it ought to be led by traditional leaders. There's no question about that. From a point of view of buy-in, government is very broad, and government has bureaucracy and red tape. Sometimes it takes longer for these decisions to be taken. But we're engaging government at a high level. We are engaging from the presidency, we are engaging from the National Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs to ensure that which we are putting across actually gets done. This is the institutionalization as well as the professionalization of the schools. Because part of the case in point of decolonization is to ensure that we mainstream that which was sidelined, so that we can put it on the dashboard of the plans of the country in the context of appreciating our own traditions. There's no point to recognize schools that came through the Western form of tradition, and yet you negate the schools that are Afrocentric. Sure. This is a very Afrocentric instrument which actually prepares warriors and leaders of the future. Why not put resources across? Why not institutionalize it?
It's an interesting proposition. I think you and I, Mr. Mkiva, both know that once state money is being used for anything, quite frankly, a whole lot more people feel like they can also be included in discussions around how that money ought to be used. I mean, I'm imagining parliamentary debates, for example, with MPs from all walks of life speaking about how initiations, for example, in the Eastern Cape should unfold. But that's the time we have. We'll watch the space to see how things unfold. Hopefully, at the very least, we're able to clamp down on the number of fatalities in this initiation practice. No matter where you stand on the issue, I feel like there is a bit of consensus around at least that particular problem. Zolani Mkiva is, of course, the Secretary General of Contralesa for now. Thanks very much indeed, sir.